Hello, all you thoughtfully made people out there. It's Courtney Morrison with Made Architecture and Design, back with another week in review. So this week, I'm going to try something a little bit different than what I've done. Instead of just walking you through day by day, I'm going to start with a comment that a viewer left on YouTube and use that as a jumping off point to talk about software, the hand of the architect, and how that actually played out in my week. So first, the comment from Michael Kennan. So Michael wrote, we had Revit LT for 6 years and finally able now to work on full Revit, mostly into to work share during construction documents, he says. He uses SketchUp and Enscape for rendering, and it's always been a bit of a clunky transition going back and forth. And then he asks, have you looked at Hypar or Snaptrude or others? He says, it's cool that you were able to dive into Rhino so quickly. He said he used it in school and never quite took to it. He says, thanks for your experiences. So, Michael, thank you for taking the time to write that. And, I appreciate you sharing what's working in your own practice. So, a little bit of background from my side. So, I used full Revit when I worked for the big firm, and it was mostly for work sharing during CDs. We were working on big projects and big teams spanning multiple studios and things like that. And so work sharing was critical, and full Revit made a lot of sense in that environment. So, but since starting my own practice, I've operated my own practice on Revit LT since I started. I've never used SketchUp, I've never used Enscape, and honestly, avoiding the kind of clunkiness that you're talking about is part of what I'm looking to navigate as well. That the bouncing back and forth between platforms is just, I want to stay in one spot as much as I reasonably can. So after your comment, I looked up Hypar and Snaptrude. I've seen ads for different types of software like this, but never really looked into them. So I looked into both of those specifically. I don't think that Hypar is really what I need for my practice and the scale that I'm operating at. It looks like a really cool tool and probably has some usefulness, particularly if you're doing a lot of space planning or test fits or things like that. Hypar looks like it could be really cool. Snaptrude also looks cool, and I might play around with the free version a little bit. I guess, it's a prompt-based design tool, and, it's not just renderings. It's supposed to kind of do a little bit more on the design side of things. And so I may play around with that some. But I will say my concern with any workflows like that is that, they really can start to remove the hand of the architect. And so that really bothers me. And so instead of putting the architect, in the role of creator, collaborator, it really moves us into kind of just, reviewers and coordinators. We're checking boxes, we're adjusting sliders, we're reviewing things that software tells us we, should do or need to do or whatever it is. And so it really, removes the architect. And so I don't think removing the architect from the process in the name of efficiency is necessarily the path to a better built environment. So Michael also mentioned Rhino, and that's been part of my own exploration recently. I have a good friend of mine who's an architect, and that's his workflow using Rhino and VisualARQ. And so I don't really consider myself the most, technologically capable person, but I was able to pick up Rhino and VisualARQ fairly easily. It just made sense to me. I've used similar modeling tools to Rhino before, and I've been using Revit for a long time. So VisualARQ is the plugin for Rhino, and it just made sense. I also set aside time to be able to dive into those programs. I probably spent, about a day and a half over a 2-day period. I did the tutorials, and I felt like I made a concerted effort to really figure out the programs and learn them. And so I didn't make up excuses. I don't have time. It's too hard. It won't work. What about, XYZ? I just, went and figured out the programs. And so I made an informed decision not to move forward with the Rhino VisualARQ workflow. And so that's important to me because I didn't walk away because it was confusing or because I was lazy. I walked away because I made an intentional choice for my business and my practice right now and how I think I would like to operate it and grow it in the future. And so that includes Revit. And so even though full Revit, to be able to have plugins and do renderings, is very painful from a cost standpoint, I still think it's the right move for me. So anyone who's wrestling with software decisions out there, my encouragement is to actually give it a shot. Download the trials, go and figure out if you feel like it's the right workflow for you. And, then you can say yes or no on purpose. Sorry, my notes aren't scrolling here. So, into the week, it's kind of the backdrop is, using Michael's comment there and kind of how that made me think about the week. So as we move into the week, thinking about efficiency, the tension between efficiency and the hand of the architect and how we think about things and create things and stuff like that is sort of how I'm going to look at the week going forward here. So over the weekend, we had family time. I got to play golf and, go to church with my family on Sunday. And so really, I kind of mention this every week, but I don't really go into a ton of detail here. But, it's that time with my family and resting that allows me to move into my weeks kind of clear-headed and be able to be fully present for my clients and for the work each and every week, because I really intentionally take downtime, with my family each weekend. So that's a note there. On Monday, I drove out to Stone Mountain to visit a church, and I walked through the church. I met a contractor there. The church is an existing, thriving church with a couple of services, and they want to add kind of a lobby living room space. You just sort of walk into a hallway, essentially now. It's a little bigger than that, but, and so they're looking for a space that is welcoming to guests and really kind of connects their circulation and gives guests a welcoming experience and a place to stay after a service or hang out before a service. And then they have youth as well, and so it's a space where the youth can kind of use on a weeknight or Sunday night or something like that. So I went and talked to the contractors about that. So we spent time walking through the spaces. We met one of the pastors there. We talked to them about that. We got to see where things felt tight, where things felt generous, and think about how that lines up for the vision of the church. And so it's kind of these and then I left there and came back to the studio and worked on marking up some drawings for an office expansion project that I have. And so I was marking those up for my project architect. Even though I was doing that digitally and doing that in Bluebeam, it wasn't physically with my hand. I have marked up many drawings, with a red pen. But, it's these two things. It's being in the space, being with the contractor, it's talking to people, it's marking up drawings, thinking about how we're communicating information and things like that I feel like is, it's not, I'm not just reviewing something software told us to do. I'm there in the space. I'm absorbing things. It's not just AI making some church that, can never exist. And same with the drawings. I'm thinking about how we communicate things there. And so again, back to that idea of software and the tension between that and the hand of the architect. And so on Tuesday, I spent time working on a house remodel. The same kind of thing as the church, except that this time I had met with the client already, talked through his scope, his ideas, what he thought he wanted, what he thought he didn't want. And so now I'm drawing. I'm in Revit. I've done a bunch of hand sketching already, and so I'm in Revit trying to make the drawings a little more real. And people will tell you Revit's a terrible design tool, and I can agree with that in some regard, but for me, I've really learned it and I enjoy working in it from a design perspective. I find it simple and easy for me to do kind of design work and space planning work in Revit now. But that's me, head down thinking about the conversations that I had with the client and, thinking about moving walls, checking dimensions, where things align, where things, kind of critical tolerances and things like that. And how it's actually going to function based on conversations that I had with him. And so it's not me just like putting his project into AI, saying design it, and kind of walking away from it. And so those are things that tools like that can't really make those decisions for me. And then on Wednesday, I went and had lunch with a photographer, and we toured a space that I had designed in Roswell. It's an automotive finishing shop, but it's different than any automotive finishing shop I've ever seen, and maybe you've ever seen. And so it's really high end, and he really focuses on the bespoke cars and automobiles. And so I walked through with the photographer, and what I really was sure to emphasize to the photographer is, yeah, sure, I did the architecture side of it, but what I want from architectural photographs or photography in this instance is I want to be able to tell the business owner's story. His craft. We took his vision and we translated it into the built environment. And so I'm not looking for photographs that show off the architecture. I'm looking for photographs that highlight his business and how he operates. And we played a small role in the story of his business. And so I want to be able to make him shine. And that's what I want those photographs to show, is that that's what we do as Made in making thoughtfully made spaces, is that we make your business shine. And so that I want that to come through in the architectural photography. And so that's what I spent a lot of time talking to the photographer about. We had lunch, we had a great conversation. I got to hear kind of his story and how he got into photography and how he views photography as a medium, as an art form. And so that was really great. I was really grateful to connect with him. And then on Thursday, I worked on the sales funnel to better track leads and some social media metrics and things like that. And so this is kind of behind the scenes work that I'm doing to make sure that my business can grow and can thrive. And so I did that, and then I had lunch with my mentor, my business mentor, sat down and talked through all of those things, and kind of I developed a strategic plan for 26, and this was part of that. And so we talked about the strategic plan, and we talked about the sales funnel and all these things. And so that was really, really great. I've said it 100 times on here before. I think if you don't have a business mentor, you absolutely should find one. And so mine has been, absolutely priceless to me. And so I've really enjoyed that time. And then that evening, I went to a meeting with a client at their house. We're doing a mother-in-law suite with him, and the landscape architect. And so we got to talk through, this is kind of a unique situation because we're within 200 feet of state waters, and so we've got to do a land disturbance permit, even though it's a residential project. And so we've got stormwater mitigation and erosion control, and goodness, I mean, it's a lot going into the site work there. And so I was grateful to be able to sit there at their dining room table, and again, it's that hands-on collaboration that no amount of software is going to do for us. And so I got to hear the landscape architect talk about his side of things. The client asked questions, me give input from an architecture perspective, so that we can deliver the most thoughtfully made space solution for the client. So that was a lot of fun, and I was really excited to do that. So that is really all I've got for this week. It's a snapshot. It's not every little thing, but it's a few moments where this question of tools and authorship are really present for me, and the tension that exists between them. Michael, thank you so much for your thoughtful comment. I really appreciate that. And to the rest of you, I'd love to hear from you on this topic. If you have any questions about who we are, what we do, or anything I've said in this video, if you've tried Hypar or Snaptrude, if you're working in Revit or ArchiCAD or Rhino, whatever it is, I'd love to know your software solution, your rendering platform, all of that stuff. I would love to hear from you. Are your tools helping you create? Are you constantly fighting them? Whatever it is, I would like to know. So drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read them, I learn from them, and every so often, like today, I'm able to kind of build a whole video around a comment. So I'd love to hear more from you guys. So that's all I have for now. In the meantime, y'all be particular.